Hello. This is my second time trying to record this video, so forgive me if the delivery is not as good as the first time. Um, so this is a video response for an assignment that I needed to do for ESL-546, which is the methods of structured English immersion for K through 12 education. And we needed to take a look at Arizona's instructional program for English language learners, um, and dive into some of the components of that. I live in Virginia, so I'm not saying I did Virginia. I didn't. I did do Arizona, but I live in Virginia, so this is definitely something that I will have to look into for my state, because seeing how Arizona handles it, it makes me curious how Virginia handles it, all right, so we have three parts that I have to answer questions to, and I only have 5 minutes to do it. There's no way I'm hitting that 5 minute mark. I mean, I'm going to go past the 5 minute mark, so I'm just, warning you, if you want to pause the video and go ahead and grab yourself a refreshing beverage before sitting down and listening to me ramble on for 10 minutes, now would be the time. Hey, welcome back. I hope you got a nice beverage and everything, and we're going to go ahead and get started, okay? All right, so our first part is terminology. We had to understand the terminology of certain things in Arizona's ELL program. And the first one is explain Arizona's definition of English learner. And so Arizona State identifies English language learners as individuals whose native language is not their own or not English, right? And so they have a great difficulty reading, writing, speaking, and comprehending English, which limits their success in the classroom. Obviously, if it's a mainstream English classroom, they're definitely going to struggle in all aspects, really. So that is what Arizona defines it as, is someone whose native language is not English. That's pretty self-explanatory, to be completely honest. But, hey. All right. Briefly discuss the distinctions between the following instructional program models, which is ESL, bilingual, sheltered English and structured English immersion. These are not in order. I did not put them in order, so I apologize. But anyways, so structured English. The goal of this is to help the acquisition of the English language, so that the ELL student can succeed in an English mainstream classroom, such as like social studies, U.S. government, via U.S. history, which is Virginia class. Anywhere where English is going to be the primary language. This class is designed to help those English learners develop those skills that's going to help them succeed in that type of classroom setting. So you would just pass the 3 minute mark, and I'm like on part one still. Sheltered English classrooms. In the sheltered classroom, essentially teachers are going to be using physical activities, visual aids, and their classroom environment to teach the concept to help them develop skills that are going to help them succeed in mathematics, science, social studies, and other subjects. Like, for example, that's Boba Fett, right? I don't know what Boba Fett would be in French or Spanish or German for that matter, but that's an example of a visual aid. So next time the student sees this picture, hopefully they'll be like, oh, "That's Boba Fett," and they know who, that's Boba Fett. They look at that and that's Boba Fett, right? Yeah. Anyways, so moving on. So English as a second language. So this is the primary techniques of this is methodology and special curriculum designed to teach ELL students English language skills, which may include speaking, reading, writing, social study skills, content, vocabulary, and cultural orientation. Keep in mind, English is my primary language, and I have trouble speaking it, as you can clearly hear. ESL instruction is usually in English, and we'll use little of the native language. So if we are in a English as a second language classroom and I'm having difficulty getting a student to recognize a banana, I may say banana in their native language and then say banana in English, so that they will be able to connect the two if they're having difficulty with that. But for the most part, it is going to be in an English setting. We're going to try to teach in English as much as possible, and in English as a second language, or ESL program. Dual language program. This is bilingual, essentially, right? So for me, I speak English, but let's say I wanted to pick up Italian. I know a little bit of Italian. Mozzarella. No, l'uomo or l'uduma, il ragazzo, ragazza, stuff like that. I'm nowhere near on the level of like fluent in Italian. But if I did fluently learn Italian while being speaking English as my primary language, I would be considered bilingual. And so in these classrooms, it is a setting in which we are trying to teach in the native language. So if I'm an English speaker going in and sitting on a French class, for example, they'd be teaching in primarily French, with using English as a means of connecting the bridges between our two cultures, right? So, like, this is a baguette. That's bread. No, it's a baguette. No, that's bread. Baguette. Okay, all right, I see that's a baguette, or something along that line. I don't know. That may have been a horrible example. Yeah, anyways, moving on. All right. Now, we're on part 2, and we're already a minute over our other time, so I'm just going to throw the time out the window and just go about as I can, rambling on like a madman. So, 4 principles of Arizona's language development approach. Briefly describe Arizona's language development approach in the synthesis of research around ELL, is the first bullet of part 2. And when I looked it up, I saw that Arizona uses 4 principles to their approach of ESL or ELL for their state, and they back these 4 principles up with rigorous testing and data gathering from the testing that they do. And when they do this, they use that testing data to help recalibrate or redesign their content delivery to their students. So, for example, we have a situation where a student, or a district really fell behind in a certain category. We have data to support that, and we're saying, well, why did they fall behind in that one category? So what can we do different to help bring that up? Or we can look at the data and say, wow, we did really good here. Or what did we do here that we can use elsewhere? That type of thing. Yeah? Yeah. All right. Explain student agency and its importance to the instruction of ELL. So, student agency is Arizona's approach to what I would think is student self-advocacy, where we want the student to be just as engaged in the educational process as us teachers are. And so we want students to be engaged in the process of their own learning. So if we are delivering something and content and it's just not clicking with them, and they say, you know what, I know what works for me, we're leaving this as and I believed I put it as a open-ended opportunity. That's what was on the Arizona's website. But they call it open-ended opportunities in Arizona. And essentially what that means is, even though we've delivered the content and we've given them the content, we're leaving the content retention as an open-ended opportunity for the student to self-engage in the content and allow them to absorb and retain that content in a way that works best for them. And then we can take that data of what worked best for little Jimmy and then redesign our approach next time, so that we just use the method that works best for Jimmy when giving content to him. So that way we don't have this lost in information retention comprehension land that I call no man's land. It's a horrible place of not understanding, and we don't want little Jimmy in there. Okay? Explain the 4 principles of Arizona's language development approach. Okay. So principle number 1 is asset-based behaviors and expectations. And essentially, what that means is that English language learners bring linguistic resources and cultural knowledge with them to the school environment. So we recognize the fact that English may not be their first primary language, but they have a whole nother language in that noggin. And with that, we can tap into that existing content to help in the deliverance of our own content of English. Like I said earlier, you're trying to teach a student who may be a cultural exchange student from, let's say, France, and you're trying to say, hey, look, this is a banana, and you say banana in French, and then you say it in English, banana. You're using that cultural knowledge that they already possess to help aid you in deliverance of the English instruction, if that makes sense. Principle 2, integrated instruction in disciplinary language and content. It does say here all educators share the responsibility for designing instruction that integrates language and literacy development with content learning. Principle 3, targeted and explicit language instruction. This is a critical opportunity to intentionally support English learners and developing the disclosure practices they need to engage with rigorous grade level disciplinary content. Okay, so we again are going back to that. Even though they're in an ESL program, we want them to participate in the general ed curriculum, and so we need to make sure that we are targeting and giving explicit language instruction so that these students can stay afloat in a general ed setting. And then principle 4, and last and not least, is assessment, monitoring, and feedback. So this is the main thing that's going to keep the whole machine working. All right, so we're using principles 1 through 3 and delivering the content, and then we're using principle 4 to see how we did on our deliverance of the content, and then reassessing how, from the data, reassessing what worked, what didn't work. Okay. Explain the process used to determine ELL program eligibility, placement, and reassessment, including the use of home language survey and Arizona's English language proficiency assessment. So I pulled this from the Arizona's government website. What is this? The Arizona English Language Learner Program from the Office of the Auditor General. And it states here, school districts identify ELL students through a home language survey and an English language proficiency test. So they get 2 tests. Okay. A student identified as not English proficient is then placed on an ELL program. So whatever language let's say it's Spanish, okay, because that's the most common thing I think we would encounter in Arizona is Spanish. So let's say Spanish is their primary or their home language. We give them an assessment or a survey in their home language, and then afterwards we give them an assessment in English, and then we compare the two, right? Is what I assume is going on here, is that we're comparing the two. And ideally, you want to be identified as an ELL student. You want your home language to be higher than your English language proficiency. So we can see that there's a complete brain fart, a complete and 100% utter brain fart, a deficiency. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. A deficiency in English is what we clearly want to see in order for them to be placed on an ELL program. And much like an IEP, which an IEP is an individualized educational program, every 3 years they have to be reevaluated to ensure that they are still that they still qualify for services. But unlike an IEP, ELL students have to be assessed every year. So this is an annual thing that is going to continuously happen to not only track their progress, but to make sure that they still qualify for these ELL services. All right, and last but not least, identify the standard accommodations available for 2 ELLs for assessment. I picked out 3 from a list that I found on the interwebs. Okay, but these are 3 accommodations that from the list are typically used for ELL students. And there's one for extremely low level, one for mid level, and then one for about high level, right? So one accommodation is pointing to a picture of the correct answer, or allowing the student to point to the picture of the correct answer instead of verbally saying it. The next level would be reading the questions and answers to the students, so that way we can make sure that they are understanding what the question is. Essentially, read aloud. We may have somebody that, speaking from a special ed standpoint, you may have a student that has difficulty comprehending or reading and comprehending at the same time. So we will read for them so that they can just focus on the comprehension. That's essentially what's happening here. We're going to read for them so they can just focus on that comprehension and understanding the question. And then finally, this is for the high level accommodation. Have student restate orally what they're writing down on assignments. So we're getting that repetition in, which is a very important thing in the learning process, is that repetition. So not only are they writing down, but they're also verbally stating what they're writing down. So they're getting that memory in place and that repetition in place. So I am done. That is my whole spiel, and it only lasted 17 minutes. I do apologize for the time, and I hope some of this made sense. I don't know. My brain is saying, this doesn't make any sense. What are you doing? But hopefully it will. We'll see, I guess. Either way, I thank you for your time, and I will catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.